What a win for Aston Villa, and I'm not sure one that anybody saw coming. Not that they thought that they might not be able to beat Newcastle, but certainly not as well as they did.
They look like a team that, like Sean mentioned, momentum, which is quite important. They've got momentum, and when you've got players as well like Tielemans, who's been having a fantastic season, the way that Unai Emery has kind of kept that squad happy, the way he's kept Ollie Watkins out, and like Ollie Watkins is coming back now, played brilliant the other day. And how he's kept him hungry. He's kept that team hungry. And this is why I believe that they're going to have a really good chance in the FA Cup. I think that team is ready to go. You know, I mean, they do need to make sure that they get the Champions League maybe, but like I think that he's done it brilliantly at Villa this season, Unai Emery. What he's done with them, how he's done it, how he's done those players and rotated them.
It's the healthy competition. I think if you go, like even at Liverpool, there's depth if you're not playing well. You can sit on the bench and a player that comes in will do really, really well. And now Villa have that. And the players they are bringing in place, the levels of those players are good. They're putting in amazing performances. So what he's done, like you said, with Ollie, is kind of got the bit back in his teeth to say, look, you're our only striker, but you're not safe because we can play Rashford up there. Asensio can go there. Yeah. Marlon's there now as well. So it's put them at the right level at the right time, because I thought they were unbelievable as well in the Champions League game.
And also, and we're unlucky not to get the victory in that one that would have taken them through to the semi-finals, where they would have been facing Arsenal, which would have been a nice one to watch. Would you rather face Arsenal, Aston Villa, or PSV?
I'd rather face Arsenal.
A PSG, not PSV.
PSG, I suppose.
Yeah, you'd rather play PSG than Aston Villa.
Yeah, because if we played them and beat them, we could get to the final. So that's all I'm thinking about.
Yeah, you don't really care. What you basically saying is, I don't care. It doesn't really matter. It was only an aside anyway, because we've been talking about Aston Villa and how well they're playing at the moment, even in the quarter-final that they went out of in the Champions League. But in terms of the performances they're putting in at the Premier League, it's about managing momentum and managing those kind of peaks in the season. He's done it brilliantly with Ollie Watkins in particular, as Sean said, who was confident and comfortable enough to come out afterwards and said, I was furious when I didn't start the Champions League game, so I've come back and I've proved what I can do. And just talked very openly about something that we normally speculate about with players.
It was really positive, and he's had a tough season because he came off the back of a really good Euros, obviously scored an incredible goal that was really important for England, and I think people had really high expectations for him going into this season, and it was a really slow start. He looked low on confidence, and actually I think a lot of Villa's season's been impacted by the Champions League, sometimes in a negative way, where I think they've struggled playing after European games in midweek, but I think they had a brilliant January transfer window, and they're now seeing that all come to fruition, and they're going to finish the season really strongly, you'd expect, and probably qualify for the Champions League again. And that midweek game, although they lost, it was a really kind of measured, impactful statement performance, and I think it gave them so much confidence. I think you rarely see games in which a team loses impact them in such a positive way, and I think they're looking just so good right now. I was really shocked to see the manner in which Newcastle fell apart, and I think a lot of that is the fact that I think it was the 6th consecutive starting 11 for them, 7th in all competitions. So they're having that opposite.
They don't have the manager there because Eddie Howe's been recovering in a hospital from pneumonia, and there's disruption.
Yeah, and I think all of that is sort of catching up with them, with how intense it's been ever since really around that League Cup victory. I think they're sort of now starting to have their come down finally from that and start to get a bit tired, and they don't have the depth, whereas Villa are sort of pushing into what they've got, those reinforcements they have, and it's working wonders for them.
Yeah, maybe the adrenaline wearing off for Newcastle.
I think that's probably something that Newcastle have to really concentrate on in the summer, is the depth. Because I think when you look at Villa and who they're able to bring off the bench and what they've done, and it's going to be important to see what happens with them, with Asensio and Rashford at the end of the season, because they look like they're very much in the ascendancy, Villa. So how are they going to sign those two players? Are they going to be able to get two players who are going to come in and make an impact like that? Because if they do, you can see Villa doing great things. But if they don't, then there might be a drop-off. And the same with Newcastle. Newcastle do need to start signing the kind of players that are going to keep them competing all the way through. And I think that's what they lacked especially in that game, no depth on the bench, no one to come in.
It's interesting when you talk about the sort of managing of Ollie Watkins and how at times he's frustrated, then he comes back and he shows people what he can do. But does that managing the squad actually help Marcus Rashford compared to his time at Manchester United when he was expected to play 90 minutes and deliver in every game, and if it wasn't him, then where was the outlet going to be? At Aston Villa, he's gone in there, and yes, the scrutiny is a little less at Villa than it is at Manchester United, but also it could be an Ollie Watkins, or it could be Asensio gets a goal, or it could be someone else who weighs in. And if he's not playing well, he just comes off. So you don't see those 30 minutes of struggle that you might have seen in 90 at Man United.
Yeah, I think that he's gone to a place that I saw Unai Emery done an interview saying how happy he is, how humble he is around the place, how pleased he is to be there. You know, he just wants to play. And I think that Marcus Rashford coming through the whole Man United academy all the way to the first team, and the pressure that's continually on you when you're at Manchester United was different for him, just because that's why it went from feast to famine when he played. If he played well, oh, he's the greatest. If he doesn't, he's the worst. And I think he's gone to a place that's stable. Obviously, it's not the level of Man United in respect of global fandom, but at the same time, he's gone to a place with less pressure. He's accepted his environment, and he's coming in to try and do the job. Whereas at Man United, he was expected to come in and do it every single time for some reason, which is not sustainable for hardly anyone.
Yeah, and can cause the kind of drop-offs that we've seen across seasons for him. But they do just seem to be managing things really well in a way that maybe is kind of coming to the end stages of the season for Newcastle. And it's a point in the season, Sean, at which there's a lot of teams that are really having to dig deep to find that last push to get them over the finish line. And when you're not quite sure what your ambition is or what your target is, can that be tricky just to maintain the very, not focus generally, but the very sharpest of focus?
Yeah, definitely as a player, if you haven't got a target. But I think with your teams like Newcastle, like Floyd and Dad said, that the adrenaline that they had after winning the cup is now coming down, because in that game against Villa, they didn't really offer Villa too much. Villa basically steamrolled them like what Newcastle did for their previous games. Newcastle were just bullies on the pitch. They were physically stronger than everybody. They kept the ball well, and Isaac was doing what he normally does. And then you got Barnes, who's coming, who's been unbelievable, keeping Gordon out of the team, and Murphy. They've all been flying, so they've been able to do that. But to come against a Villa, who was in the position they were in, just totally wiped the floor. So that focus sometimes, when you have a target there, is so much needed, because Villa are focusing on, right, we have to finish in the Champions League now. And that's what they're going for. Whereas Newcastle, I don't think they're thought about the Champions League places. They're like, if we can get there, then massive. But right now we've got silverware, so it's a positive season in many ways. And
the reason I asked you that question is because of the situation that City find themselves in. So a team that are used to challenging for a Premier League title or getting into the latter stages of the Champions League now find themselves chasing a Champions League qualification spot. And you just wonder how players who are used to going for the very highest prizes, I think, are sort of feeling about going for the next tier.
Well, this is where we're going to find out in respects of City, because they don't have to do that. They're normally in it without having to qualify for it. So they're now seeing what it's like for a team that's chasing to get into there, with them obviously being so dominant for the last 4 or 5 years. So it's going to be interesting to see what that squad is capable of. I do believe they'll make it, and simply because of the quality they've got. And I think that in O'Reilly, they've all of a sudden unearthed a player that seems to be able to score goals and create something. Yeah. So I think they're going to limp in. He's pretty similar to the Skelly situation, because he's a attacking midfielder by trade as well, and he played there, and he's been phenomenal. And I was lucky enough to see him with him pre-season. They played against Celtic, the first pre-season game, and you could see he had something, but it was almost a humbling for him in terms of he wasn't thinking quick enough, the physicality side of it. But all the way through that pre-season, he just got
better and had that understanding.
You can imagine he's training with them every day now. Yeah. You know, that brings him up to another level, like we saw with Phil Foden.
Yeah.
He's going to be some player if he
and you don't know what you don't know. When you go in as a young player, you don't know what that level is until you've played.
And I think you mentioned Phil Foden, but I think City have been lacking some of those breakout younger players who freshen everyone up because their energy, because any player who comes into a team between about 17 and 21 just has this boundless energy that soon runs out once they're playing, you know, however many games a season. But that energy is so unique to a player of that age profile. And I think that rubs off on other players because he will be fearless. And I think City needs some of that as well, because that's what happened when Phil Foden broke through. It's what happened when Cole Palmer broke through. And I think the other players rub off on that as well.
Where are Chelsea at the moment? I'm looking at the 2-2 draw last weekend and then that late winner against Fulham this weekend, 90+3 for a great goal from Pedro Neto. But it feels as though there's a tension brewing at Chelsea about the way that their season has gone, that patience with this new system and this transitional period is starting to wear thin. Yeah,
we heard with Maresca having a kind of had a pop at the fans, which I always feel is not the right thing to do, just because you want to...
Never a good sign, is it?
Never a good sign, you know, because like the fans he said the fans put pressure on the goalkeeper to kick it. He kicked it long, they won the ball and scored. I think that he's got bigger fish to fry in respect to what he's doing, because we've seen at his teams before, something seems to happen to him in his second season. It seems like it's happening now. Chelsea have totally dropped off from where they were at the start of the season, where people were even talking about, oh my gosh, Chelsea going to be a kind of Leicester this season, just do it out of the blue. But they've not
been... Instead, they're more like Leicester when they won the Championship under Maresca, and the second half of the season.
Second half completely fell off. But I think that it's imperative for Chelsea to get into Champions League because of everything that entails for that club. They have to be in it with what they're paying people, with what they're trying to do, what they're trying to get, where they're trying to get to. So I think that they're under the most pressure to try and get back in. So it's a good one to look at, Chelsea. It's one of those, you get the popcorn out with Chelsea at the moment.
I think their fixtures are tough as well. They've got to play a lot of the teams out also chasing. I think the frustration for some of the other sides that are still in Europe is that their European performances have been good. That second leg last week for Chelsea, the fans were not happy. There were boos. It was a really poor performance against a weak side, and I think that's only added to it. I think you look at the relief in Trent Alexander-Arnold's goal, but I think with that Neto goal, given what Fulham did to Chelsea at Stamford Bridge on Boxing Day, Chelsea managed to flip the game just the same way. And I think that was really important for Chelsea to kind of build that confidence and also bring a bit of excitement and belief back with the fans and sort of signs of life. But I just don't know how they can move that forward with so many players still out of form. Cole Palmer's obviously not in great form. Nick Jackson's still not back to where he was pre-injury. And I think that is really hard, is that these moments can win you games, but unless you can carry that with you, I'm not sure it's going to be enough for them with the games they've got to make the Champions League.
And the thing is, with all the teams there, Sean, and we can take a look at what they've all got coming up, but when you look at the teams who are around about those Champions League fixtures, there's quite a few fixtures between them, which means it could all change again. And also, they're in this position because they've been inconsistent throughout the season. So when you try to predict what's going to happen with them, you go, well, which bit do I base it on? Do I base it on the good version of them, or do I base it on the negative version of them?
They're struggling massively in terms of, like, with all these quality players, they still don't have a real leader. And they're going into this tough run towards the back end of the season, not in great form, scraping through in some of the games which Chelsea of earlier would have blasted them away, sort of thing. And they got most probably, I would say, arguably the toughest run out of all the teams. And
Forest Chelsea on the last day of the season at the City Ground, which will be absolutely rocky. If that's still on the cards, and if that's still in the air for both of them.
Newcastle as well there.
Yeah.
I think that you look at that run for Chelsea, and you probably have to look at Newcastle's form at the moment and Manchester United as two games that you must win. I think they struggle in the other three, the way they're playing, but those two, I think they must win, because you look at Newcastle, they do seem to be running out of steam at this stage. And if Chelsea can get themselves going like they did the other day, they scraped it against Fulham, they could probably sneak themselves in.
just to point out, Forest is 6th there, but they play against Tottenham tonight, so they could go on to 60 if they win that and move into 3rd place, which would knock Chelsea out of the top 5 spots. But looking a little further ahead, as we said, it's very difficult to predict. So instead of getting humans to do it, we've got computers to do that for us. So Opta have had a look, and Opta are suggesting that Newcastle are the favourites to finish inside the top 5. Then it's City, Chelsea, with Forest and Villa being the teams to miss out. All right, you can argue with the computer. It's just a model.
Where's the computer? I don't know how they've picked out. They obviously did. They see the game and now Newcastle fell to pieces towards the end because they're exhausted.
And this is,
Opta, can they take that into consideration?
What Opta can't take into consideration is the human factor. It can't take in that kind of human fallibility. And actually, where these kind of models fall apart is on the kind of unknown quantities. But what they can do is look at how these teams have performed over the course of the season, look at the level of their opponents and how they've performed over the course of the season and work it out from there.
It's an interesting one because Newcastle, as Dad said, have fallen apart. I think Forest in many ways have fallen off as well. They look quite tired as well. So
this game against Spurs is particularly interesting tonight, I think. It's almost... For people trying to predict it, it's almost the perfect opponent because if they're absolutely on it, they should be fine.
Yeah.
But if there's just a little bit of frailty, it's at Tottenham and they've just got a performance in them or moments in them, that Tottenham side that could undo Forest.
Couldn't agree with you more. I think, especially Forest, I'm not sure if he's fit to play tonight, but Aina, he's a massive difference to that back four, and they've been punished from him not being there. And Nuno's been doing some really, I find it quite strange that he hasn't just played Callum and Elanga in every game. He's been playing one or the other, and then not starting them. And I thought when he initially did that in the cup game, that against Brighton, that he was focusing on the Premier League to try and stay in there, and then the Premier League game comes up and he goes the opposite way again. So it'll be interesting to see what he does today.
Yeah, going to be very interesting to see what happens in that game. It is all